Good morning, everybody. It's 7:02 here in the East on this September 18, 2023. And we start this hour with a Fox News alert. President Biden, right there, is in New York City for the United Nations General Assembly, which officially starts today.
Iran's president also set to attend as a prisoner swap, which will release $6 billion in frozen assets, is set to take place this morning. We expect it in about an hour.
That's right. Our very own Jackie Heinrich is live outside of the United Nations. Jackie, what do we expect to happen today?
Well, guys, good morning. We are expecting to hear from the White House a short time from now, but we've already heard from the Iranians. They've announced that the prisoner swap is going to take place today, and this $6 billion in previously frozen funds is already moved from South Korea into Qatar. The White House maintains that this is not a ransom payment because these are not U.S. taxpayer dollars, but their argument is also somewhat self-defeating. Listen to this.
They aren't going to be released for nothing in exchange.
But didn't they also get 5 Iranians?
They will get 5 Iranians as well. Yeah, Jackie.
Then why did we need to add $6 billion on top of that?
This is the deal that we were able to strike.
The 5 Iranians will receive clemency in exchange for the release of 5 American detainees, although 2 Iranians, according to the country's foreign minister, will stay in the U.S. We're told the Iranian government will only be able to use these funds for humanitarian needs, and there will be strict controls on every transaction, with the U.S. able to stop things down if it's not going to plan. That is despite the Iranian president's claim that his government can use this money however it wants. But the deal comes as the head of the UN nuclear watchdog, the IAEA, warned the international community is losing interest in holding Iran accountable, with violations becoming routine and Iran's stock of near weapons-grade uranium increasing. And congressional Republicans say this deal has already had ramifications that are counter to U.S. interests.
Guess what's happened since then? A third of the inspectors at the IAEA, that's the International Atomic Energy Agency, have been stripped by Iran out. And also, just today, this morning, the Saudis said, hey, this deal with Israel you're trying to negotiate, we're out. It's having a damaging effect throughout the Middle East, and it all started with this very naive transaction of $6 billion. Imagine what Iran's going to do with $6 billion.
So U.S. officials insist that they are still going to hold Iran to account, that no sanctions on Iran are being lifted here, and that this deal is separate from U.S. efforts to prevent Iran from getting a nuclear weapon, the world's biggest sponsor of terrorism, from getting a nuclear weapon, guys.
That's right. Jackie, welcome to New York. Thank you very much. She joins us from the East Side. Now here in Midtown Manhattan, we've got right over here. Let's bring in the governor from the Commonwealth of Virginia, Glenn Youngkin. Good morning to you, Governor.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me. Lawrence, congratulations. It's so much fun to be here. You were in Virginia with us during the campaign, so it's great to see you.
Congratulations on your win as well, sir.
Thank you. Thank
you.
So,
Governor, let's talk a little bit about, Jackie was just talking about, so we're going to unfreeze that $6 billion. It was South Korean money that was frozen during the Trump administration. Iran's going to get the money. They say they can use it for anything they want, although we think it's for humanitarian reasons only.
they're going to use it for whatever they want.
Yeah.
Money's fungible, and they'll just move it from one account to the next.
Why the money? Why not just do the prisoner exchange?
Yeah, I'm shocked as well. I don't understand that. I think listen, getting Americans back is of the utmost importance, and clearly there was an opportunity for an exchange here. I have no idea why the money was thrown on the table, but let's just be clear. That money will not go where they have promised the Biden administration where it's going to go, and I think it's representative.
You don't trust them?
The Biden administration, I think, is naive. They're naive when it comes to how they deal with Iran. They're naive the way they deal with China. And let's just be clear. These are nations led by a communist party or a dictator that are going to do whatever they want to do. And they're going to say what they need to say in order to get what they want.
You brought up China, and over the weekend it was reported, I think on ABC, that there was meetings between the foreign secretary of China in Malta with Jake Sullivan. Again, another official meeting with China. They don't meet with us. We don't have communications with them military to military. Are they more vulnerable then they led on economically. You know so much about them from your previous career.
Yeah, well, first of all, they are vulnerable economically right now. We're seeing this economy that was really built on centralized planning stumble seriously, and it starts with an overbuilding of real estate all over the nation, forcibly funded by Chinese Communist Party controlled banks and other institutions. And so they've got a real challenge. And of course, the single child policy is going to come back as their demographics have shifted so hard. It's going to come back and bite them because they've got to pay for all of this. So they are really struggling economically. The reality is we just have to recognize that China is trying to dominate the world, and they will do everything in their possibility to do it. And that includes economic imperialism, forcing American companies to do what they want outside of China in order to keep access to that market. It includes massive surveillance, which we're seeing all over, not just balloons, but what's happening in Cuba, what's happening with Chinese communist citizens coming into states like Virginia, across the border, trying to get access to our military establishments, and it's saber rattling all the time against our best allies like Taiwan. I mean, this is a moment that we have to step back and we have to recognize that these are not friends, and we've got to meet them with real strength. And the Biden administration continually shows weakness, and that is at America's detriment.
Governor, I want to switch gears with you. You're in a swing state. We covered your election heavily. We saw the change in the polling where you were down in the polling, and you really took the issue of parental rights. As we go into this next election, what do you think the messaging of the GOP needs to be to win the White House?
Well, we have a great window into that right now in Virginia because we're off cycle and we have our midterms. Our entire House and our entire Senate is up here starting in 5 days. We start early voting and we have a 50-day sprint to November the 7th. And I think the issues in Virginia today are just a precursor to the issues we'll see in 2024. What are people in Virginia worried about? They're worried about the cost of living and the impact that Bidenomics has had on their lives. Every time they go to a grocery store, it's a gut punch. They can't make ends meet. They're also hugely concerned about their children's education and the learning loss that has been persistent following terrible, terrible decisions made previously to keep schools closed for an extended period of time is having a lasting impact, particularly on our younger kids. And they're terribly concerned about safety. And of course, we're seeing the free flow of drugs coming over the border make its way to every state. Every state is a border state, and the cartels' reach is deep, and the gangs and illegal drug trade is causing Virginia. 5 Virginians a day on average die from fentanyl overdoses. I mean, 5 a day. These are the realities that are on voters' minds in Virginia this year, and I think they're the same realities that will be on Americans' minds next year.
So you have said children belong to families, not to the state. So many people agree with you. That's part of the reason why you won in Virginia, because parents were fed up with the government trying to tell us how to raise our own children. We're seeing that in your state of New Jersey, with what they're telling schools. There's also a new poll that we wanted to ask you about. They polled men and women to find out who's the happiest. And women who were married with children, 40% said they're very happy. It drops to 25% for married and no children, and it keeps dropping. If you talk to a woman who doesn't have a child, and then it drops for unmarried women with children to 17%. As far as men, 35%. You can see right there, married fathers are the happiest. Your reaction?
Well, I'm really happy. And so I'm part of that 35%. You know, it's just, I think, encouraging to see something that we believe in our hearts is probably right. You know, I've had the great blessing of nearly 30 years of marriage to an amazing woman, Suzanne. We have 4 great kids. And listen, raising a family is hard. And in today's world where the family is being assaulted by Bidenomics, and it's so expensive to raise a family. I mean, 60% of Americans can hardly make ends meet today. We see the role of social media completely invading families' lives and causing behavioral health and mental health challenges beyond anything we've ever seen before. So it's hard to raise a family today. And yet the blessing of a forever partner and kids is really special. So I was really pleased to see the results here, although they weren't surprising. And again, I'm constantly thankful every day for my amazing wife and our kids.
So, you know, Governor, I know of some top Republicans who would be very happy if you wound up running for president of the United States this cycle. Of course, I know you're laser focused on Virginia. You would like the Republicans to control both of the chambers. But, you know, after November 7, what are you going to do? Let's say you win.
Well, first of all, we fully intend to win, and this is the most important election, I think, in America right now, because it is a real step to finish
What's the balance
work.
right now?
So our House, we control 52-48. The Senate is controlled 22-18 by the Democrats, and so we got to hold our House and flip our Senate. And here we have, Lawrence, back to the topic we were talking about earlier, a chance to step forward and demonstrate the issues for 2024 in Virginia in 2023. Are we going to allow parents to raise their children, or are we going to allow the state to step in and intervene? Are we going to support victims or criminals? Are we going to make sure that Virginians have access to their money, or are we going to let the government continue to spend it? These are the same issues that I think are so important for us to demonstrate in Virginia, that a state that used to be very blue, in fact, can stand up and completely pivot. And that's what's so exciting. So I am laser focused on Virginia. I'm laser focused on us holding our House, flipping our Senate. That's why we have a huge early voting program this year. We got to get people off the sidelines. We have 45 days of early voting. We rolled out secureyourvotevirginia.com and have encouraged everybody, register to vote early, make a plan to vote early, so that we, in fact, can win this most important
Governor,
election.
you saw the debate a month ago, 3 weeks ago, and there's another debate next week. Is there anyone on that stage where you thought they got much more on the ball than I do? I could never get the nomination as long as they're in the race.
Well, they're all campaigning in Iowa, and I'm campaigning in Virginia. So we're just doing different things.
What do you think about the talent on the stage?
But I'm impressed by the talent on the stage. I mean, think about it. We've got extraordinary governors. We've got folks that have led the nation in various ways in foreign policy that's critical. And we have a former president. So we have great talent. The key thing for us is we have to win. I mean, the future of the nation is at stake. We've watched what Joe Biden has done to this nation over the last few years. Our foreign policy is a disaster, as we have an open border that is allowing our foreign enemies to come across unconstrained. We've been weak with Russia. We've been weak with China. We've watched our economy fall apart, truly. We've watched Bidenomics truly steal hard-earned money. Start-earned money. I know, but Americans and Virginians know the truth. And when they go to the grocery store or they try to shop for their children, they understand the reality of what he's done to this nation economically. And I would say, finally, the future of our nation is our kids. And what the liberal left has done to our kids in terms of educating them for the future is a true travesty. Schools were shut for an unnecessary period of time. Virginia was 44th in the nation in getting kids back in the classroom. The learning loss is deep and pervasive, particularly for our young kids. We have got to provide the kind of resources to get them back.
What candidate in the race, and I'm not asking you to endorse, but who is best for Virginia then in this race right now that you see on that stage?
I think we know the
former
answer
president?
to that.
I'm going to let Virginians choose when it's time. My big observation is we have great candidates who reflect a different path forward than what Joe Biden, and we have got to win in 2024.
Will you ever run? Will you ever run for president?
Oh, goodness gracious.
You haven't decided, have you?
Yeah, well, no, what we're doing now is doing the best job we can as governor. And I have to say, I've never gotten a promotion in life without doing a really good job in the one that I'm in. And I'm focused on doing a really good job in the one that I think we're doing well. Listen, Virginia was in the bottom third in the nation in job growth when we came in. We're now top 4 since then in job growth. We have the largest workforce in the history of Virginia. We've just hit a 12-year high in labor participation. Our kids are getting huge focus. We've just rolled out intensive tutoring and a big program to combat chronic absenteeism, because what happened in the last administration was they taught families and kids that not being in school was okay, and it's not okay. They've got to be in school.
Can I make one suggestion? As a former basketball player that likes to fill his time by working out, you watch Doug Bergram play basketball and tear his Achilles. Will that keep you from playing basketball before a big election?
Well, I do still like to play basketball, although I have to say my kids now beat me routinely, and so I'm real hesitant to getting on the court. You know, there's a big difference between 20-year-olds and a 56-year-old, and so I'm really careful.
Real quickly, you've run businesses. What would you tell these big automakers, because they're striking? The workers are striking right now.
Yeah, I'd say cut a deal. It's time, and put people in a room. Listen, I've watched these hard hard-working Americans who are on strike, interviewed on many shows, they want to go back to work. And, of course, the automakers want them back to work.
They want their benefits back that they lost at the collapse in 08.
They did. But here we see again the Biden administration driving this myopic focus on everything being green. And they recognize that more electric vehicles means fewer jobs.
Yes.
And that's just
40%
clear.
fewer.
And on top of that, their own increases in salaries haven't kept up with Bidenomics-driven inflation. And so this is a real indictment, I think, on the Biden administration, who's supposed to be pro-labor. He's not helping labor. He's actually making the cost of living in America run away from them. They should come together. They should agree a deal. I think both parties have the right incentives, and it's just a matter of getting it done.
Well, listen, if your party wins both houses of the legislature down in Virginia, and mid-December you want to make a big announcement, stop by. We've always got room on the couch for you.
Thank you. What we need between here and there is voters to get off the sidelines, Republican voters to go vote, hold our House, flip our Senate, and make a statement for America that a state that was blue can wake up and say, no, that is failing us, and we are going to have common sense conservative policies, and we are going to win.
You sound like you're running for something.
Right. All right, Governor, great to see you.
Great to see you. Thank you so much for having me. Congratulations again, Lawrence. Always fun. Listen, there's still room on this sofa.
I know. Yeah.
We've got one person behind you with
who's starting to do the news.
And Carly's right there.
I love when Governor Youngkin comes in studio because we always get to talk behind the scenes, and you're so generous with your time, Governor. So thank you for coming in and joining us this morning. We always appreciate it. All right, got some more news to get to here. Starting with this happening today, negotiations are set to resume between union leaders and the big three automakers. This comes as the strike enters its fourth day, costing the U.S. economy an estimated $2 billion so far. Former Chrysler chairman and CEO Bob Nardelli will join us later this hour to talk about this. The Senate will no longer enforce a dress code. Fox News senior congressional correspondent Chad Pergram confirming that news yesterday, adding senators can now wear whatever they want. However, others entering the chamber must comply with the dress code. Coats and ties for men, business attire for women. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer says he'll still wear a suit, but the move allows Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman to wear his usual outfit of a hoodie and basketball shorts in the chamber. So interesting development here. We're becoming a sloppy nation, guys.
I don't like this at all.
Right.
What are we, slobs?
Well, Republicans got to win back the Senate for another reason.
So, Carly, the senators don't have a dress code, but people who visit.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah, so was this just because of John Fetterman?
I think so.
Yeah, it's got to be. But I don't know.
That's crazy.
I'm not on board.
No respect.
I think we're becoming a sloppy nation, even outside the Senate, too. You walk around airports, we're wearing pajamas.
People used to dress up to fly. Now they're in pajamas,
I
see people in slippers.
Yeah, I sleep with my heels on.
It's embarrassing.
As a nation,
a lot of people in pajamas at the airport.
As a nation, we ask you to shower today and get dressed. Let's start today.
Please.
Thank you, Carly.
And vote early.
All right, still ahead, off the rails. Shocking new video shows a train filled with cheering migrants heading toward the United States from Mexico. Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick is on the front lines of the battle for border security, and Dan, is next.
Plus, Attorney General Ken Paxton scoring a big victory over the weekend, acquitted on all 16 articles of impeachment. Paxton faced corruption charges by a group of Texas state senators, but says the White House was pulling the strings. In a scathing letter, Paxton writes, quote, I can promise the Biden administration the following: buckle up, because your lawless policies will not go unchallenged. We will not allow you to shred the Constitution and infringe on the rights of Texans. You will be held accountable. Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick joins us now. Lieutenant Governor, you oversaw this trial. You were the judge in this trial. Yeah. What do the folks at home that aren't Texans need to know about it?
Well, they need to know that we should not look at impeachment like a parking ticket. Impeachment was something that was rarely used in states or our federal government for most of our history, because it's a very serious issue. You're overturning a recent election. You're throwing someone out of office. You better have the proof. And you just can't, again, look at it like it's a parking ticket. And that's what it's becoming. And in Texas, in the Texas House last May, over the Memorial Day weekend, when no one was watching, they were on vacation, they had only a 4-hour debate in the Texas House to impeach Ken Paxton as the Attorney General. Now, there were two House reps, Lawrence, that stood up on the floor, two of their most experienced lawyers. One of them said the impeachment in the Texas House was indefensible. There were no witnesses put under oath. There was no cross-examination, and the Attorney General was never allowed to answer any charges. Another representative, one of the most experienced lawyers in the House, stood up, Travis Clardy, and said that they would look back one day on this and say, you know what, we don't know what we're going to do in this impeachment decades from now, but we're not going to do what they did. This was a farce from the beginning. Members in the House only had 4 hours to look at no evidence. There was no evidence in the case that they sent us. And so they sent us the case. We spent 90 days studying it. We spent 9 days in trial. And our members looked at the evidence and said, it's not there. There's no there. And so he was acquitted. And I'm asking for our Constitution to be rewritten on this issue. Number one, in the federal government, if you're impeached like Clinton and President Trump were, you still maintain office. In Texas, you get thrown out, you get suspended with no pay. So basically, they're as Representative John Smithee said on the House floor, our policy is to hang them now and judge him later. So he was put out of office with no pay. That needs to change. Secondly, every House impeachment in the past, they've only had 2 in Texas of statewide in the 1890s and 1917. They had witnesses under oath, they had cross-examination, they had a full trial that went on for weeks and months and sent us 70 cartons of documents. In this one, we got basically nothing. There were no witnesses, no evidence at all. That's what House members said, and that's why he was acquitted. The House never proved their case. They had a weak case, and every witness they put on the stand, which was now under oath, they crumbled, all but one. They crumbled on the witness stand with cross-examination.
And
There was
Lieutenant
no witness, and that's why he was acquitted.
I think a lot of Texans are saying all these allegations were presented before the last election, and voters still re-elected Ken Paxton. I want to get your thoughts on this because, as you know, the state of Texas has already dedicated about $5.5 billion to the border. And this video shows a train filled with cheering migrants heading toward the southern border from Mexico. And then you got these kids that are crawling under the razor wire that the Texas DPS installed. Is this crisis only getting worse for our state?
Let me tell you, for our state and for America, you know, in most big cities now around the country, they see people here illegally on the streets everywhere they see them. And I've been saying this, and I know we've talked about this, Lawrence. I've been saying it a long time. We are now approaching a moment where we have between 10 and 15% of every person in America being here illegally. Before Biden came into office, we had between 25 and 30 million people here illegally, according to the MIT study and my own records that I keep. And under Joe Biden, we've had 2 million apprehensions every year in a 4-year term. That's 8 million. Another million plus gotaways we see and we can't catch. That's 9 million. And by the way, we don't apprehend everyone. As you know, Lawrence, you're a Texan. So if we apprehended 8 million, let's say a one-on-one, there's another 8 million that got in. That's 15 or 16 million people since Biden became president that's illegally here in this country. Add to that was here before, we're now between 40 and 50 million people here illegally. They have health issues. Most are not highly educated. They don't know our history, and it harms our very foundation of a nation. We need a Republican president to shut down this border and end what is ending America over time.
Yeah. Either we're a nation or we're not. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, thanks so much for giving us some time this morning.
Thank you, Lawrence, and congratulations. You're a great man. We're proud of you.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate it. I'll send it over to Stephen Ainsley.
All right. He's right. You are a great man. Listen, we got a Fox News alert right now at 7:30 here in the East. Police are set to hold a press conference, and you can see right there the microphones are ready. Our lead story, 9 teenagers escaped a juvenile detention facility in the state of Pennsylvania. You're looking live at Morgantown, PA. Let's go ahead and listen to law enforcement because it sounds like they have captured
all 9 of them.
A number
all
of them.
9 of them.
I'm Trooper Bain, the Troop L, PIO, DAVID, BEOHM. I am happy to report that all 9 of the escapees from last night were picked up within the last 2 hours. Just give you a little rundown. We had 4 of them at around 5:45 this morning go to a house on Oak Grove Road. basically banged on the door. They were done. They were tired. They were cold. We went there, took them into custody. Then at 6:36 this morning, we had a report of a stolen vehicle and a trailer at 202 Oak Grove Road. Our people were right there. They got into like a sort of a pursuit with this vehicle and got the vehicle stopped at Furnace Road and Mounts Road, where they took 4 into custody in the pickup truck. 1 took off in the field, taken into custody shortly thereafter. So now we have all 9 of them are in custody and they're not out there anymore.
Were any actively resisting arrest?
No. The 4 basically gave up because they were cold. The other five, I mean, no.
What happens to the boys now?
So they'll all be charged with escape and any other charge. We had the criminal mischief for the car I told you about before, right? The car they tried to get in. Those, we have to put them there, but they will be charged with any crimes that they committed. They're going to be charged with, whether it's stealing the truck, all going to be charged with escape.
Do you know how the truck was stolen? Were the keys left inside?
That I don't know.
Did the capture of the 4 lead to the 5? Did they talk about the 5?
All kind of in the same area. All that stuff with the car when they broke the window to try to get the car, that's kind of all right in the same area.
Can you describe the conditions that you found the boys in?
Well, I saw 2 of them when I was leaving because our command post was at Abraxas, and they're really dirty looking, and they look like they probably have been out walking in the woods since 8 o'clock last night. I think both of them came in without any footwear, but their footwear were slides. So they look pretty weary looking and dirty.
True. Can you elaborate on what extra effort, what extra cost? I'm not asking for a dollar amount, but when people escape as they did over the last 2 weeks and as they did this morning, what kind of extra effort, manpower, cost does it put on the state troopers in order to bring them back in?
Well, I mean, we're going to do what we got to do. We had a whole group of folks that were coming in this morning to start at 7 o'clock, and of course we had to cancel them, and that come from all around. That just doesn't come from right here in Troop L. That comes from everywhere.
Is there any chance that schools reopen with them all being caught, or is that going to make people crazy?
I don't know that they would do that, but I can't answer for them.
Do you know if there was a change in tactic just based on the fact that these were kids, juveniles, compared to the Cavalcante search, and knowing that they weren't homicide suspects or anything like that?
Well, some of them did, like I said earlier, have some interesting charges. So we have to look at anybody that's taken into custody and are in custody. When we go to apprehend them, could one of those teenage boys kill a cop? They absolutely could. So we're always high alert. It doesn't matter how old they are, I guess is what I'm saying.
But none of them, as far as you know, gotten any access to anything else while they were out there?
No.
About how far were they from the actual detention facility?
About 4 miles-ish. Not far.
Are they going back to the detention center, or do you guys?
Well, so that's a whole thing right now. So we're going to interview all 9 of them. We'll all be interviewed by our criminal investigative unit at Reading, and then I know there's stuff in the works right now to decide.
We are listening to law enforcement update the press regarding that essentially a jailbreak at a juvenile detention center last night about 8 o'clock. 9 juveniles escaped. When we went on the air 5 minutes ago, the number was 4, but as that trooper said right there, Ainsley, in the last 1 hour, they caught the last 5.
Yeah, and he said some of their, what they were convicted of is pretty questionable, so we weren't sure how dangerous they were, because this is a flashback to last week when Danilo Cavalcante was caught on Wednesday. It happens that these guys were actually caught 15 miles away from where he was caught, so people living in that area, the schools were on lockdown when he escaped, and then the schools in this case as well. So you heard that reporter ask, should they open up schools today, or would that cause too much confusion? I know as a parent, there are a lot of moms that are working moms, dads that are working dads that have already made plans, but they probably prefer their kids to be in school because they want them to learn, but they also might not have another place for them to go.
Well, you could tell the troopers are relieved.
Yes.
Those 9 teenagers now back in custody.
Yeah,
All right.
good job, law enforcement.
Indeed. More updates throughout the morning. In the meantime, Brian is in the downstairs area with something else.
Yeah, let's talk unions. This morning, negotiations set to resume between United Auto Workers and car makers as the strike enters its 4th day. And the UAW says they're not rushing to endorse Union Joe.
President Biden says he's the most pro-union president in American history, but you haven't endorsed him. What is it going to take for you to do that?
Our endorsements are going to be earned. We've been very clear about that, no matter what politician
How
it
does
is.
he earn it?
We expect action. We expect action, not words.
Yeah, how about green action? Former Chrysler chairman and CEO Bob Nardelli joins us now. Bob, you're the perfect person to talk to about this, removed from it, but know all about it. Your thoughts about this strike? Where do you side, with management, or do you side with the workers?
Well, thank you, Brian, for having me on, and congratulations, Lawrence, to join the program. So, Brian, here's where I'm at. I'm looking for a fair, equitable settlement. We know that household income is under a lot of pressure due to this administration's fueling inflation, number one. So I'm not on either side. I'm looking for a fair and honest negotiation.
What's fair
here.
when it comes to wages?
Yeah, well, fair was Stellantis came out over the weekend. I was encouraged, put 21% on the table, and I guess it was flat rejected at this point. So I think what's happening here, Brian, is there's tremendous polarization going on between, the big three and the UAW. Now, here's what's happening. They're looking over the fence and they see a settlement with UPS 40%. But let's keep in mind, UPS settled, but the Teamsters lost 30,000 jobs when they pressured yellow freight. Then they saw American Airlines. They saw the dock workers on the West Coast. So they're in line saying, hey, it's our turn. So I think fair negotiation to try and keep up with inflation for household income. Maybe there should be a cost of living to keep that steady as we go forward. But some of the other things are clearly overreaching, Brian. You can't get paid 40 hours a week for 32 hours of work. There's no way we can technically reinstate pension programs. So there's a number of add-ons here, whether they're just negotiating ploys, but it certainly is pushing both parties further apart. And I think this is going to have a devastating impact on our economy.
Right, and of course the ripple effect down to dealerships who now again won't be getting cars. And now there's just kind of a wave type of strike where only 8% of the workers in Ohio, Michigan, and Missouri are out. But let's see if that grows or changes. But I got to bring you to something else in your notes that you said matters, and that's this government-subsidized push to green energy and these electric cars. The government is making sure electric cars are successful by giving these companies money to have these electric cars and subsidies for the consumers to buy them. That's not fair.
No, that isn't fair. I mean, let's unpack that for a moment. This is the very administration who is desperate to get endorsed by the UAW, and yet they're forcing the transfer from internal combustion engines to electric vehicles. My good friend Jim Farley has lost $6 billion in conversion to EVs over the past 2 years. He just took a $9.2 billion grant to build a battery plant in Michigan. That's proof positive that he's not trying to, eliminate union workers, UAW workers. Now, the problem is, they're forcing something before it's time, Brian. They need an infrastructure to be able to charge these vehicles. And so no longer it's not, anxiety over EV, it's anxiety over the ability to charge these vehicles going forward. So this is going to continue to compound the problem that we have. And I think what's happening here also, Brian, is you've talked about it, the cost of these vehicles are going up. Second, I lived through this in 07, 8, 9 with Obama. This is just another page out of that playbook where they put in the CAFE standards, which eventually they had to take an off-ramp. This was forcing the consumer to buy small cars. You cannot force a consumer to buy something they don't want. And the problem is there's a lot more optionality now, right? Honda, Hyundai, Tesla. So I think that the UAW is in a very sensitive situation with a very fragile economy that could go sour on them.
I think a guy like you coming in would actually help with negotiations, especially when they hear you speak like that. Bob Nardelli, thanks so much. I know it must kill you not to see Chrysler as one of the big three forced to sell off Chrysler because Barack Obama decided that was the right thing to do. Maybe you'll get some investors and get it back. Bob, thanks so much.
Thank you, Brian. Yes, it was a tough nut to swallow. Let me say that.
Absolutely. Should be for all Americans. Thank you. All right, coming up straight ahead, killed in the line of duty. Police mourn the loss of a Los Angeles sheriff's deputy gunned down in a suspected ambush at just 30 years old. We have a live report as police search for the gunman.
Hello em, anh kiểu chuyên biểu diễn nào tôi được.
Chưa đợi cái gì vậy?
Anh không anh đố em mà. Đây em nhìn quả chuối nào to như này chưa?
Cái quả này bật sọc một chết thật là vãi chưởng.
Đúng là quả chuối rồi nhưng mà đây là quả chuối gì? Cầm thử đi. Cầm thử đi. Em được cầm không em so với thằng này xem nó bằng bao nhiêu phần của quả chuối này à?
Cầm đi, dội nó quay lại đây nào.
Đấy, so sánh đi. Không khác biệt đâu.
Khác gì anh?
Khác nhiều không em?
Khác nhiều với anh.
Em ơi,
anh
để cho nhờ tí đâu. Em đoán cho anh tên quả này anh sẽ tặng em 20k. Đọc đúng tên thôi.
Ok.
Đây là một loại quả ở Việt Nam không phải ở nước ngoài. Ok. Quả của anh đâu nhỉ hai nhỉ? À đây đây.
What?
Ừ? Chuối tiêu làm sao to được bằng như này?
Em không biết.
Đây chuối thật chứ không phải là anh làm bằng sáp hay cái gì nhá. Đây em sờ thử đi. Ok chưa? Đấy, chuối chưa? Nhưng đây là chuối gì? Chuối hột đó. How about this one? This is Vietnamese style, by the way. So, does this one maybe reach the expectation? Maybe this one? Just leave for her for me. Huh? What does she say? Huh? The Vietnamese style. Đối với quả này là quả gì? Đâu nhỉ? Đây. Hả? Đây là quả chuối. Hả? Tất nhiên đây là quả chuối rồi. Đối với đây là chuối gì?
Chuối... Em còn chưa thấy bao giờ.
Chưa thấy bao giờ hả?
Vâng.
Chưa thấy quả chuối nào to đến mức này như bao giờ hả? Thế anh mới hỏi đối với đây là quả chuối gì? Đây là chuối thật nhưng không phải là chuối xốp fake mà anh rồi đặt làm đâu. Đây là quả chuối thật. Ok. Đây cỡ là nhựa nhức hàn ho nhá, đầy đủ nhá.
Em chưa thấy quả này bao giờ.
Chưa thấy quả nào to như này đâu đúng không?
Vâng.
Nhưng mà đối với đây là chuối gì?
Em chỉ biết là chuối thôi. Không biết là chuối gì.
Chuối này là chuối khổng lồ à?
Vâng.
Chuối khổng lồ và chuối này được nhập khẩu từ châu Phi về. Nhiều làm gì? Việt Nam em đã nhìn thấy quả này bao giờ chưa? Chưa bao giờ đúng không?
Vâng, nhớ đâu ở Việt Nam không có em chưa thấy sao.
Thế em lớn đến tầm này là 10 mấy năm, 20 năm rồi. Nếu mà em chưa thấy khổng này thì chứng tỏ ở Việt Nam không có thì em không thấy được chứ. Làm sao em ở Việt Nam bao lâu không thấy. Quả này là quả chuối khổng lồ được nhập từ châu Phi về.
Ảo thật đấy.
Chỉ những vùng như châu Phi đất nó kiểu như màu mỡ nó mới trồng được quả chuối to như này. Thân nó phải to bằng đúng gốc này. Cao độ 100 mét.